Fox 11 10 o'clock news.
Tonight, the Fox 11 News investigation that's at the center of a heated political battle in the South Bay. Next week, in a special election, voters will choose between Janice Hahn and Craig Huey for the 36th Congressional District.
Huey supporters have been going door to door with copies of an investigation reported by our Chris Blatchford 3 years ago about Janice Hahn. Last week, Hahn's attorney sent us a cease and desist demand to stop us from doing a follow-up story. We've decided it's important to set the record straight.
Thanks.
City Councilwoman Janice Hahn 3 years ago abruptly cut off this interview. During this 25-minute session, we were pressing Hahn for more than we were getting as we asked her about using gang members as paid intervention workers. 3 times her press aide interrupted and tried to stop the interview. It ended with this final question. Should convicted drug dealers and rapists work as gang intervention workers?
The evidence in this case was absolutely overwhelming.
3 months before the Hahn interview, convicted armed robber, druggie, and rapist Steve Myrick, a PJ Crip gang member from Watts known as PJ Steve, was sentenced to 2 life terms in prison. He had "Trust No Bitch" tattooed on his arm.
He showed no mercy.
When at gunpoint, he threatened to kill, then raped a young woman in front of her boyfriend during a home invasion robbery. PJ Steve's defense attorney at the sentencing presented a certificate from Janice Hahn
that commended Mr. Myrick on his efforts to bring peace to the community.
During this 2006 interview with Hawthorne police after his rape arrest, PJ Steve quickly explained he was part of what he called the peace movement.
I've been working with Janice Hahn. You know what I'm saying?
He said he was to be paid for his efforts.
We've got a ceasefire in Watts right now. And we had to bring everybody to the table, like people that Janice Hahn couldn't get out and reach.
Did you get paid for that, or?
Yeah. Well, actually, I get paid from Jim Brown. I just got put on his payroll.
Former NFL great Jim Brown, who founded a gang intervention project called American, at the time of our original story, never returned repeated phone calls and email.
So, you work for Janice Hahn and Jim Brown.
American executive Monique Brown now says Myrick wasn't on the payroll. In any event, between 2004 and 2006, PJ Steve bared his buttocks in front of a crowd, told cops to kiss his ass, was caught with an open container of booze and marijuana, and violated 3 orders to stay away from the Imperial Court's projects.
But all the times, I was sent over if I heard.
Her, he said, meaning Janice Hahn. And in February of 2006, before his arrest for rape, PJ Steve, facing a list of misdemeanor charges, was released from county jail on his own recognizance, called OR.
That's why I'm out right now. Ms. Hahn got me out like 3 weeks ago.
Later in this Daily Breeze article, Hahn insisted, quote, "The only thing I've ever done is call and ask what the basis of an arrest was. I never called to get anyone out of jail." But an angry city attorney who was prosecuting PJ Steve's misdemeanor cases and who does not want to go on camera now gives this quote to Fox 11 News. "I was told Hahn's office called and said PJ Steve worked for her, and because he was a gang intervention worker, they asked for an OR release and it was granted."
She got me out, so it was cool.
According to the Daily Breeze, a week later, when a frustrated PJ Steve walked out on a Watts community meeting, it was Hahn who chased after him. This article in LA Weekly says, "Little Janice Hahn jumped out of her seat and went after PJ Steve like she was Pittsburgh Steelers strong safety Troy Polamalu." Hahn, when we interviewed her 3 years ago, denied ever speaking on PJ Steve's behalf.
You spoke on his behalf several times.
No,
Should the Hawthorne Police Department say you?
No.
5 days ago, after making new requests to interview Janice Hahn, her attorneys sent us a cease and desist demand to stop us from doing this story. The document says Fox 11 News falsely claimed Hahn bailed a criminal out of jail. We never said that. We did report on statements from gang members, social workers, prosecutors, and police officers, including confidential law enforcement intelligence documents, all raising questions about Janice Hahn's support for gang intervention programs. We did say Brandon B.L. Bullard was a Grape Street Crip shot caller from a clique of gangsters who had Mac 11 submachine guns tattooed on their right hands. And in this LAPD field report, he said he made his money as a gang intervention worker for a group supported by Janice Hahn. After B.L. was killed in a gang shooting, she spoke at his funeral.
We call on all of you to be peacemakers.
Grape Street Crip DeMarco Chaffold is a convicted bank robber known as D.C. He was quoted in another LAPD field report saying he was making a living as a gang intervention agent sponsored by Janice Hahn. In our 2008 interview, Hahn told us she supported the use of gangsters to do intervention work and said flat out they deserve to get paid for that work.
I think you're saying some of these people have been a part of the problem in the past. Well, I'm here to say they're a part of the solution now, and I think that's positive.
Number one worldwide on top.
Marlo Jones, a two-strike felon Grape Street Crip known as Bow Wow, was arrested 3 years ago for violating a gang injunction. He listed gang intervention as his occupation, noting meetings he attended in Janice Hahn's office. Here at the Universal City Hilton 1.5 years ago, he and a gangster entourage beat, choked, and robbed Bones Thugs and Harmony rapper Byron BusyBone McCain of $35,000 worth of jewelry. Bow Wow, posing with the jewels here on the left, was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Bow Wow, B.L. Bullard, and DeMarco Chaffold, all three claim to be paid gang intervention workers for a group called Unity One. This recent legal demand from Councilwoman Hahn's attorneys says we falsely claimed these three gang intervention workers were paid with tax dollars. We never said that, but we raised the question. And 3 years ago, when we tried to pose that question to Bo Taylor, the Unity One founder, he hung up on us 3 times. We did know then that Taylor and his second-in-command, who hired and supervised the gang intervention workers, were paid with city tax dollars. The money came through a San Pedro agency called Toberman House, a group with close ties to Janice Hahn.
Where we are today is in a disgrace.
Our story 3 years ago came at a time when City Hall was reeling with doubt about the wisdom of paying gangsters to do intervention work.
This problem is way beyond the variables of control.
We have no measures to hold them accountable.
We did another story about an 18th Street gangster named Hector Marroquin, also known as Weasel. He sucked up more than $1 million in city gang intervention funds and is now in prison for selling illegal machine guns. And in the wake of our stories, the city completely revamped its multi-million-dollar gang prevention and intervention programs. There is a new academy to vet and train gang members who want to do the work. In Hahn's attack on our stories, she has repeatedly stressed that she never, in her words, made direct payments to intervention workers. We never said she did. In fact, no one told us she was actually writing the checks. But most we talked to were convinced Hahn was a driving force behind programs that got money to gang intervention workers. She walked out on our interview 3 years ago, and now, rather than answer questions, she had her attorneys send us a cease and desist demand. Chris Blatchford, Fox 11 News.